And then they became like, oh, I'm Batman. Like, who's worse, me or the Joker? And you're like, the Joker.
Yeah, it doesn't make
And I
any
go,
sense.
really? I'm almost as bad as the Joker. And you're like, no, of course the Joker's way worse.
Hey everybody, this is Perch, and answering another viewer message. Here is, that sounds so formal. A viewer, I need, whatever. Robin. Okay, so the message basically goes this way. Robin is my favorite character in all of DC. I love all the Robins and who they grew up to be. I follow the series that features current or previous Robins above all other DC comics. It's the character that got me into comics in the first place because of shows like the Teen Titans and Young Justice, which wasn't that original purpose of the Robin character in the first place, to draw in kids and younger readers. I'm not sure about that, but we'll get more to that. I watched the original Teen Titans cartoon, but I'm pretty sure Teen Titans has far surpassed the original's popularity. So it begs the question: why hasn't Robin been a figure in any live-action Batman movies since the '80s? And why are there no attempts to capture that audience of Teen Titans Go and direct them towards comics, particularly because the Batman book with Damian slaps? And then there's a lot to unpack here in this mail, but finally we get Robin is a very old character and so is frequently pushed aside. Meanwhile, based off your videos, DC is struggling to pull in young readers with their YA books. Maybe let Robin be prominent again in media and in comics and let the character do its job and attract young readers. I expect the erasure stems from the Nolan movies because ever since Batman Begins, everything in Batman has to be dark and gritty and real. It's getting tired. They should bring back the camp, and it doesn't have to be all campy like the '60s show, but Batman is fundamentally campy. The man's fighting gimmicky criminals dressed as a bat. Let him have his traffic light looking kid, too. All right. I like this perspective. I like, first of all, thank you for writing in. It's different from some of the other mails I get, and I love the fact that you're coming from a different direction. In this case, I think there's a lot of negativity, I guess, it gets thrown around to Teen Titans Go and Young Justice and cartoons like that. But it's undeniable that Teen Titans Go was popular with an age group that DC would like to have. It's really no different than in the '80s, Marvel having the Star line of comics. And I don't know that any comic collector was chomping at the bit to read Top Dog or Elf, but it was the gateway into a lot of Marvel comics. The people who were reading Top Dog were later reading the X-Men and the Avengers and Spider-Man, which is kind of the entire point. And I like what you said there about, DC is absolutely struggling to get, the big two both are struggling to get YA kind of off the ground, but they have had some successes. And one of which has been, for some other Titans characters, the Beast Boy and Raven, and then Beast Boy Loves Raven and Primer have all been very successful. In this case, the Titans characters did well. Those are known entities. They were, of course, done differently from the comics, but kind of like Teen Titans Go, not that much differently. I mean, if you read them, they're clearly YA and they're different, but it wasn't anywhere close to as much of a departure as, say, the I Am Not Starfire or Nubia experiments, which were extremely different takes on those characters. Beast Boy and Raven, it's close. Again, it's close in the sense that Teen Titans Go is close to the Titans. I mean, it's a different. You can read it and it's clearly different, but the differences have a lot more to do with the audience they're targeting as opposed to just randomly making the characters different, if that makes any sense. Teen Titans Go gets a lot of hate, partly I think because of the art style, partly because a lot of the comic fans, they just don't want to see it. But I think the argument of it's not for you or it's not made for you, it's a little bit different. It's like it's not made for your age. Teen Titans Go, it's clear who that's made for. It's not made for the 30-something kind of grown-up who has been reading comics forever and is a fan of the George Perez Titans. It's a very different beast. Doesn't mean that some people might enjoy both. Some people do, but it's a very different thing, which is I think a much different place than a lot of comics where they roll out a character or a story or something to the current buying audience, to that 30, 40 something comic collector. And then when that group says, I don't like it, they say, well, it's not for you. And then the argument, ensues. But Teen Titans Go, they didn't replace the Titans with that version. It was on, basically in a kid's cartoon block. So it was like they weren't stealth replacing the Titans with Teen Titans Go. It was a different thing. It was a different product. It was marketed and positioned and available to the market they were going after. It was successful. And so I don't have the same kind of irritation about Teen Titans that others do. But now I've talked about a lot of things and not Robin. I absolutely think you can do more with Robin. I think that but DC's kind of in the weird place with the Bat family. They've got so many things going on with trying to make Harley Quinn and Nightwing, and now we have a Robins book for that matter, which features all the Robins together. But they're doing it in this same kind of almost dark and gritty way, like you say. I don't know for the main DC universe if you could bring in Camp. I mean, God knows, I would probably like it. I would probably enjoy a little bit of a more lighthearted Batman run. I've definitely enjoyed very dark and gritty Batman stuff, like City of Crime and like The Cult. Those stories, I think, of Batman's were incredible. But at the same time, the dark and gritty, just to be dark and gritty, it is getting old, and it has been done, and it feels like a retread a lot now. I don't know, the Joker's done something really bad. I should probably kill him, but I can't kill him. Side against my code. But this is bad. He's doing something more evil than normal this time. It's played out. I think if you're talking about YA, yeah, I mean, if just like Marvel's experiencing right now, they've got a Miles Morales book out aimed at the YA audience. It's doing very well on Amazon. It's successful, and it's making a lot of money. And I think if you're DC, a Robin book that gets put out for the YA market, that's not examining his sexuality, not examining not school shootings or any of the other stuff, but just having a character who's having fun, slightly campy adventures that any age could pick up and just enjoy. Pure escapist enjoyment kind of thing. I think that would be really smart. And if you like Robin and you like that kind of enjoyment, I mean, the other part to this message that I think is interesting, I draw your attention to. First of all, you're not going to be like a lot of other comic collectors. Everybody's a little different. And I'm sure there's people who are reading that message going, that's not me. I'm not that person. But I'll bet there is one common thread to your message and a lot of other people. And that's like, at the end of the day, you want a core story with some adventure, with some, something fun you can kind of dig into. Doesn't have a lot of weight on top of it, doesn't have this overbearing sense of itself, isn't trying to, change the whole world around or anything else. You want a comic featuring a character, a kind of core essence of that character. Now you're talking about something a little bit more campy, more dialed back a little bit for Robin, not dark and gritty, but still you're talking about a focus on a character without a lot of gimmicks that tells a story that people can attract and can bring people on. And I think almost everybody is asking for that same thing in different areas. Maybe it's Ian who wants Spoiler to have a Stephanie Brown to have a comic like a different Robin to have a comic like that. Maybe it's somebody who just wants a Spider-Man adventure where he gets to be Spider-Man. That is kind of the reason I think why Nick Spencer's run was by and large well liked, because it was Spider-Man, had some kind of Spider-Man-like situations, had adventures, unstoppable villains that Spider-Man had to somehow defeat. A little bit of a backstory and subplots going on with Kindred. I mean, it wasn't overthinking itself, and yet it was a solid story. It did its job. It didn't feel like something that had been done 1,000 times before, but it was leveraging a model that is tried and true. I think right now it's in many ways, I think comic publishers, comic writers, editors, people who are putting this stuff out, they pick the worst of both roads, where they say, okay, on one hand, I don't want to do what's been done before. So I'm going to intentionally defy expectations. I'm going to do something different and unique. But at the same time, I'm going to go to my personal interests, which just so happen to be the same personal interests that are shared by the vast majority of my peers. And so I am going to wind up telling the same kind of story that's been told a bunch, but using a different formula that doesn't work. If you read a lot of comics in the 80s, and people have rightfully, I think, pushed back on me when I say I love those comics, it is 100% true that a lot of comics in the 80s had the same formula. If you read them, there's a very similar story structure. There's a very similar way that kind of threats are handled, and it's very, very same. In much the same way that a lot of horror movies have the same kind of general structure and outcome, and a little stinger at the end that shows that the threat's not completely gone, so leaving the door open for more. It's very, very similar. That story structure worked pretty well. It's a question, and I think you could debate it, of whether that story structure would work today. I believe it would. And my primary example of that is a lot of people are buying back issues, and the movies are all mining, the 80s content. So I think that story structure still has a lot of merit. But there's a belief inside of comics that that is old fashioned. It won't work for people. It won't work for current audiences. There's no way you can attract new people in. And so they're deliberately doing kind of the opposite. They're doing different things, but they haven't found something that actually works better. So they've rejected the thing that used to work. They haven't found a new thing that works. And we're all just kind of stuck in this loop where nothing is really landing right now. And that's the problem. Meanwhile, as further evidence that I do think that 80s storytelling would work, manga's doing great, utilizing that exact same structure. A lot of Netflix shows that have seasons use that exact same structure. And for whatever reason, comics just wants to reject it. It's aggravating. But I've gone way farther in your question. I would love to see them do more stuff with Robin. I'd love to see them weed out a few of the Robins. Frankly, I think that they've gone afar. I think Tim Drake was the Robin that could have been the closest to what you're saying. You don't have the dark, gritty Red Hood stuff. You don't have the evolution to Nightwing. I think Tim Drake was the one that could have those lighthearted, kind of campy adventures. But DC is going to spend the next 5 years or so examining Tim Drake being bisexual. And so I think that's what they're going to get wound up in. So maybe we'll get out of Damian. Frankly, by the way, a lot of the things you mention here of what you like about comics and what you'd like to see more of is the reason why people liked Super Sons. And I think that talking about Super Sons has become this polarizing topic where it's if you agree, you hate Bendis, and if you don't agree, then I don't know, you're okay with him being bisexual. It's just turned into a goofy thing. And what people are forgetting is the primary part of Super Sons that worked, that people liked, was the fact that it was fun, that the comics felt like an adventure, that it was something that was very accessible. You could come into it, you could read it, and it was just good escapist storytelling. That was the thing that people loved about it the most. The reason why a lot of people were decrying aging up John Kent is because they liked that Robin and Superboy hanging out together having adventures. They liked that aspect of it. With the aging up, they took away that aspect of it because a lot of people suspected, and they were correct, that an older John Kent would not be having kind of wacky adventures and kind of escapist stories, but instead would be getting involved in more adult situations and dealing with dating and dealing with his sexuality and other things, and we're going to lose some of them. And they were right. We have. So anyway, for what it's worth, great question. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and I liked it, and thank you very much for taking the time to write in. And I hope that we do get a Robin comic that you enjoy. Do you have a question? Mail it to me. Love to hear it. And thank you, everybody who does mail questions in. Thank you, everybody who supported Jim and I Jump. It's still up, although we're getting close to the closing this campaign and getting these comics shipped out, which we're going to do immediately. So thank you, everyone, for that. And thanks for listening.